Hello and welcome to the Insider, a show designed to clue you into the biggest news, events, and announcements inside the video games industry. Discussing with you some things you may know, some things you may not, and a glue that holds it all together is a little bit of my own opinion. My name is Paul James, thank you very much for watching, and let's get for their episode. So aside from E3, which is kind of hanging by a bit of a thread these days, and that's a whole other topic that maybe we'll talk about in Patched at some point. Gamescom has for the longest time been essentially the big number two event for the calendar year in the gaming space. And that's because it's Europe's biggest gaming event in terms of the actual physical size and the number of attendees. It far exceeds what E3 has ever done. And it's growing in its prominence in terms of the games announced, things revealed, things announced, things shown. It's becoming a bigger and bigger event, and one that publishers, developers, and consumers are paying more and more time and attention to. So in this week's episode of The Insider, we're going to look at three different aspects of Gamescom 2019. We're going to talk about Opening Night Live, Jeff Keighley's upcoming event. We're going to talk about the Inside Xbox showcase that's going to be there, and Google Stadia Connect. There's three big showcases all going on next week, just before the conferences begin, Australian time. It begins at 2 a.m, August 20th, and we're going to get three successive conferences there, and there's going to be lots of things shown. So this week's episode, we're going to look into all of those things, make a few predictions, talk about what we know, talk about what we don't, and we'll go from there. We'll begin by talking about Inside Xbox, which has been a feature of the last few Gamescoms now. Inside Xbox is Xbox's kind of Nintendo Direct style of thing, but it's live still, or in some ways. It's not the canned footage that links and seamless and everything runs perfectly. It's still got that human element that we kind of expect from an E3 style conference of over the years. It's kind of this nice mix of the pair. But the thing is, that the concerns that I've had with Inside Xbox over the years is that they don't really announce too much. But it seems like through a few different circumstances, and I think namely the fact that next gen is now getting fairly close, it's kind of forcing Xbox's hand to be a little bit more active. So we already have confirmed Gears 5, I guess I should say. The Horde mode is going to be shown there. It's going to be debuted there. We're going to learn more about Minecraft Dungeons. And that's all we know officially so far. But there's a few things we can predict and I think reasonably expect from this conference. So I'm expecting to hear and learn something about Halo Reach, the fact that it is coming to the Master Chief Collection. I expect that we'll learn a little bit more about that. I think it's not unreasonable to assume that we'll learn a little bit more about Ori and the Will of the Wisps. We obviously know it's coming out early next year. Why not show a bit more? It's certainly one of the most anticipated games for many, certainly myself. Bleeding Edge. It makes sense for Ninja Theory to be there, given they are the developers. They're based in Europe. It's far more accessible for them than it is to go to E3, for example. It just makes sense, and we already know about the game. And there'll be obviously some sort of indie presence. Xbox has really been building that up over the recent years, and I don't expect that to diminish in any way. But that's Inside Xbox. So next up, at 3 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, is Google Stadia Connect. It's following the Inside Xbox conference. These are hourly intervals, these things here. And I have to wonder, how are they going to match what they showed at E3? They announced Baldur's Gate 3, or Baldur's Gate 3, depending on how you want to pronounce the game. And Baldur's Gate is one of the biggest franchises ever. It's super important to the way games have kind of developed over the journey. And now we're getting a third one, and Larian's working on it. It was announced via the Google Stadia Connect at E3. How do you match that? When we know Google's got the intent to, because they've been hiring the likes of Jade Raymond and several other really high-profile developers from all around the industry. They're pulling them all in. They're throwing that Google money at them, and some magic's going to come of that. The only question is, how far into development are some of these studios? Some of them will be at the earlier stages, others far enough, like Larian, to actually announce their work. What Google has said is that we're going to, quote, get brand new trailers. Also, we'll be going behind the scenes with our partners. Now, how much of that partnership aspect of it is actually those trailers versus their own internal stuff, that remains to be seen. We haven't gotten an official first party Google Stadia announcement yet. And it seems fair that we should get one of those, but who knows how far and how deep in development these studios are. Everything's under lock and key there. They're doing a fantastic job keeping things quiet. It could just end up being a case that we get exclusive announcements for more games along the lines of what Larian's doing with Baldur's Gate 3, where we get these things announced on that platform. Maybe it's PC exclusive for a while. Eventually it comes to consoles. Eventually it comes to Steam. But Google Stadia Connect is where we get to see these games for the first time. That, I think, is the more likely scenario as they continue to build their first-party presence into the coming years. But we'll see. There's plenty of intrigue around this particular showcase. Next up is the big one. Opening Night Live, hosted by Jeff Keighley. Jeff Keighley is getting out and about yet again. He's doing a lot of work with E3 these days. Of course, he has the Game Awards. The guy knows how to pull in announcements, exclusive premieres, all that sort of stuff that he really, really works hard on, and he does a fantastic job. And as such, we already know that there's a huge number of developers / publishers that are going to be present. There's a long list. I'm going to read them off camera here, so please bear with me. We've got 2K, Activision, Bandai Namco, Bungie, Capcom, EA, Epic, Koch Media / Deep Silver, Private Division, keep in mind they're a subset of 2K / Take-Two, Sony Interactive Entertainment, Square Enix, Ubisoft, THQ Nordic, Google, Xbox is going to be there, and we already have some confirmations in the form of Death Stranding, the Gears of War 5, Gears 5 campaign, Destiny 2, we're going to learn more about the DLC there, Borderlands 3 is going to be present, and I think it's pretty fair to assume with the Private Division aspect that we're going to get one of, or potentially both, of the Outer Worlds. We're going to see and learn a bit more about that. That's obviously only a couple months away now. And Disintegration, a new game that was announced by Private Division only a month or so ago and was confirmed to be at Gamescom in some capacity. My conclusion is that we're going to see it at Opening Night Live. It seemed like a cool concept with some really cool talent working on it. We'll just have to see whether we actually get it there or whether it's just going to be a presence on the show floor later on. Let's, in the next segment, talk a little bit about some of those predictions that I've got for Jeff Keighley's show. It's time for some Opening Night Live predictions. And again, I'm going to spend a little bit of time reading off camera here. I made a little list, I've checked it twice, all that sort of rubbish. But we do know that there's 15 world premieres going to be going on, at least. And there's a laundry list of different publishers and developers and console manufacturers that are going to be present. So, I've already outlined a few things that we do know, and here's some things that I'm speculating that maybe we'll also see. Elden Ring. I think it's fairly reasonable to assume it might be there. It's a big profile game. Bandai Namco is going to be there. I don't see Bandai Namco getting up there and showing off tales of the new Tales or anything like that. I think Elden Ring, a Souls-inspired game, Miyazaki, George Martin, it makes sense for that game to be there. The Avengers, we know that the footage from E3 that was made were kind of behind closed scenes that media got to see at the time is going to be made public around Gamescom afterwards, thereabouts. So I think maybe it makes a bit of sense that we see that debuted at Opening Night Live. Call of Duty Modern Warfare should be there. That's the Activision representation. Fortnite, that ticks off Epic. Monster Hunter World Iceborne, we might see something new about that. That game's super, super close now. Get excited for it. Plants vs. Zombies, I guess Garden Warfare 3, but it's to be called Battle for Neighborville. It's been leaked, it's been teased, it's not been officially revealed. That would tick off the EA presence. I'm sure they'll be there with other things, probably Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order as well. Then I've got two more, maybe slightly left center, maybe a little bit outlandish sort of predictions to make. The first, and maybe the more realistic of the two, is that The Last of Us Part 2 might be there. We haven't seen or heard anything from this game all year. There's lots and lots of speculation that's leading people to conclude that we're talking February, March next year in terms of release date. And no indication yet from PlayStation, and it is still early, that they'll have any presence at Paris Games Week, any major presence at Tokyo Game Show, or whether we're going to get a PSX this year. It seems like a good time for Naughty Dog to step up and unveil a huge segment of The Last of Us Part 2. Tell us a bit more about this Joel and Ellie dynamic. Tell us more about what this world is and what's going on. What makes this different to the original game? My last prediction, we're going back to 2K. And I'm speculating, and this could be one of those things that could potentially be at the Google Stadia Connect as well. Could even be at Xbox. I'm predicting that we might finally see the next Bioshock game. Whether you want to call that Bioshock 3 because the third game was Infinite, Bioshock 4, whatever we want to call it. Maybe we just call it Bioshock, or Bioshock another subtitle. It seems about time. We know that there's a game in the Bioshock franchise that's being worked on. Ken Levine and his crew aren't working on it. But there's plenty of reasons to think that this thing's getting pretty close. Maybe it's a tease of what's ultimately going to be a next-gen game. I don't know, but I think it's pretty fair to assume that we're getting pretty close, and opening night live might be the best time for it. We know Jeff Keighley's got a great knack of picking out some really big titles and knocking down some really massive exclusives, and this would be a truly massive one. So let's hope it plays out. And that concludes this week's episode of The Insider. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Hit that notification bell, that way you're alerted to every new video the moment it goes live on the channel. That includes Patched, more of The Insider, Player 2 plays like Game Review, Gamer School, and a whole bunch more. There's some awesome content there on the channel, so please sub and go and check it out. Visit the website, player2.net.au, where you'll find reviews, previews, opinion pieces, news, features, the Player 2 Writers Draft, links to our podcast series, Dev Diary, and the Player 2 Pixelcast, links to our Twitch page, twitch.tv/player2au, where we've got regular streams, some awesome content, all stuff that is well worth checking out. So please make sure to visit the website. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/player2au, kicking a few bucks. At the lower tiers, you get early access to episodes. Higher tiers, you'll get monthly episode exclusives. Finally, there's Twitter. You can find me at Paul James Games. The website you'll find at Player2au. And until next time, presumably where we might be debriefing a little bit based on what we've seen at GamesCom, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.